Welcome, everyone, to People on Dating. I'm your host, Will Morales. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this podcast is about the ups and downs of dating and how to navigate through it. Today, my guest is Carrie Jeroslow. And it's funny because I
You got
practiced
it.
it before.
You
let me
got it.
let me tell you a little bit about Carrie. She's an international best-selling author, intuitive and conscious relationship coach. Carrie helps people learn the tools to relate consciously to themselves and others. She believes that when we learn and accept who we truly are, we're able to be more authentic in our relationships with others, which in turn brings on unparalleled sense of fulfillment to our lives as a whole. Carrie, thank you so much for being on People on Dating. How are you?
I am great. I am so happy to share this space with you right now. And I'm looking forward to this conversation.
No, so am I. So, Carrie, tell us a little bit about yourself. What was Carrie's journey like? How did she get here? What was, how did you get here to today? So tell us a little bit about yourself, Carrie.
That is a loaded question. I've got 52 years to fit into this. Now, I think like the highlights and what I like to talk about in terms of, my relationship journey started at, I would say like my first 12 years of my life seemed pretty idyllic. I had 3 older brothers. My, mom was a great mom. I felt like all my needs were taken care of and felt safe. And then at the age of 12, everything got thrown up into the air. And I talk about this one moment before kind of that crazy moment where I was on the playground with my friends, and my friends really said to me, they were like, "You have the most perfect parents." And that's what I believed. Well, it came out that there was dysfunction in my parents' marriage, and there was not happiness, fulfillment. My father went and sought that somewhere else with a close friend of my mom's. And it was like in one moment, there was an earthquake and my whole world was changed. And really, when I said like the pre-divorce time was when my parents, I never saw them fight. I never saw them argue. And right after everything came up, it was like my house became this war zone of constant yelling and screaming. And, as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old girl, that's a really pivotal time in terms of, my sense of understanding about intimate relationships. And so they got divorced. My father married this woman. My mother, had to learn how to take care of herself and get a job that she hated. And it was really her and I, because my brothers were pretty much out of the house. Mm-hmm. And so I really learned to be scared of relationships. And there's like all these beliefs that I didn't know until several, like 20 years later, that were formed in that time. And so I was really like never really dated in high school, college, never really dated. In after college, I moved to New York City, where you are.
Right.
And I dated someone who I thought was like the one, and he broke up with me. And that was just a huge time where I thought, I need help. I need to figure out why this is always happening. Because even in the little non-relationships that I had in high school and college, the guy always broke up with me for one reason or another. And I just remember sitting in my little 250 square foot apartment on 71st and Columbus when I was in my early 20s, crying myself in my little loft, like I'll never meet someone. I will never, ever, have a relationship like I want. And I just went into a lot of healing work, spiritual healing. Talk therapy didn't quite work for me, but spiritual healing really spoke to me in terms of like understanding myself as not just a physical body, but as something bigger, and that this was important in my life path and my purpose to go through this experience. And after all of that, I connected with a guy who became my husband. We got married. He was living in California. He was an intuitive healer. We connected through my search of, what was going on within me. We had a beautiful friendship, beautiful connection. He was like no other I had ever met. But we didn't have a real physical relationship, sexual relationship. And I think after 6 years, he was the one that came to me and said, I think we can do better. I think we can have it all. And so we ended up getting a divorce. And that was a moment where I said, I've got to figure this out, or else I'm going to close off my heart forever. That's an option, but I don't want to do that. I want to experience like the fulfilling relationship. And so at that point, I went so deeply into my healing. I found an energetic modality that really worked on the subconscious level that helped me heal massively. And within 3 months, I realized that that relationship and all my relationships had to do with this unhealed wound with my father. And in those 3 months, I was able to heal the relationship with my father. It was pretty miraculous. And then all my relationships with men after that changed. And finally, I met my second husband. And, you know, we have the most conscious relationship that I've ever experienced. And we also, you know, are 17 years into it. We have 2 kids and we have life that comes up. But we also are both very committed to understanding ourselves, to understanding our triggers, and to communicating as best we can in any given moment. And through this process, I've really seen how much this allows me to evolve as a human, allows him to evolve as a human, and allows our relationship to evolve as well.
Wow. I mean, that's some journey that you went through, and at least, but you had self-awareness of what was happening. And, you know, I went through that, and a lot of my friends went through the same thing when, you know, with some of the people that I talked to, and we always reflect back what we could do better, or what should we, you know, and not to take our last relationship into the next one. Cause I know I've done that. And, you know, I try to make a conscious thing about it by saying, shoot, okay, that was the past, this is the future. And it seemed like you did that once you found out, you know, that you healed your relationship with your father. Like for me, I had to heal my relationship with my mother, because there was some issues that I had when I was much younger. And now it opened me up, especially after, I guess I was in my 30s, maybe early 40s. So, and today it's a great topic about intimate relationship. So in your journey, Carrie, the people you talk to, the people you coach, the people whoever it is in your circle, is it the expectations are too high for relationships now? I mean, you know, when I'm either reading about relationships or listening to other podcasts, it seems that standards are like so high now. Especially on some of the women's part. So let's be honest there. You know, I know guys have standards too, but are we seeing more and more just the standards just going up way high, and some people just can't meet it? Or
I
what am
love
I
this
missing here?
question. I love this question, Will, because I talk about expectations all of the time in my podcast, on social media, because there is such an unhealthy expectation. This happily ever after narrative, I think, is so impossible and makes us all feel like we're failures in relationships. And what I talk about is to, you know, let go of the labels, let go of like, this is a good partner, this is a good mother, this, and this takes, you know, it's not just like, I think it's sometimes hard to be like, just let it go. You know, it's not always like that, because there's deep programming that is within us that says, this is what I've been told a good marriage looks like. This is what I've been told a good boyfriend or girlfriend looks like. To let all of that go. And I always talk about coming back to yourself, knowing yourself most intimately. You should be the most intimate with yourself, because by knowing yourself, you are able to know what is in best alignment with you in terms of, let's say, an intimate relationship. So letting the expectations go of like, I grew up learning that a good husband would be someone who supports me. But you know what? I don't want a husband to support me. I want to co-create our life together. So that's a perfect example of saying, like, I'm going to let go of expectations either I had or my parents had, or what I was told makes a good whatever. And I'm going to zero in on what is really important to me. And I think like that's what I love about my relationship with my husband, because we have designed our relationship. We came into it saying, we want to let go of what society says is a good marriage. And we're going to know ourselves to know how we can come together and design our unique relationship, because there's not anyone like you. So we try to fit ourselves into these molds when I'm a unique person, and my life and my entire past is so different from anyone else's, that how can I say my relationship should look exactly like, I don't know, someone else's or something I see on TV when I'm not even that person. So, I learned that lesson through parenting, because I am an older mother. And so I raise my children in what I call Pinterest parenting world, which is like, like pretty cute sandwiches and, lots of art projects. And that's just not the kind of mother that I was, but I had this expectation that that's what makes a good mother. And I really, like, motherhood was really challenging. I felt like a failure all the time. When I let that go and I asked, what am I good at? What do I like about mothering? How can I show up for my child in a way that is me? I started loving motherhood. It was so much more fun. And I think relationships are very similar.
Yeah, I like what you said, the expectations. And I did a podcast about this maybe a year ago. And I think, when sometimes I speak to a woman and she'll ask me, oh, what do you like in a woman? And I remember I used to come up with like 3 to 4 things, maybe 5. And then, like, if it wasn't met 1 or 2 of them, then I'm like, this is not going to work. So I don't even set expectations. To me, one of the things I want to know, do we have good chemistry? Do we have good conversation? And then from there, maybe things will start working itself out. I don't even want to say, oh, what do you look for in a woman? If somebody asks me that, I don't. I like what you said, no labels and know yourself, and I think those 3 things, expectations, no labels, and know yourself are huge. But like I said, when talking about your coaching again, is it more the young people, the older people that might be past 45, 50, they might know what they want, they got the life experience. But if you do deal with younger people, or they're at a crossroads where they don't know what they want, or the women has said, again, the expectations are a little too high. The men can't reach it because they're young. They're working on themselves. How do they coexist, especially when it comes to younger people? Because, eventually your kids and your nephews, your nieces, they're going to become adults soon. And, how they're going to navigate through that, especially when they're in their 20s and early 30s.
Yeah. Well, I work
Sorry,
with
I was all over the place there.
I know, I love that. I work with all ages. And what I find is each generation has very specific wounding that needs to be looked at. And my coaching is it's not just like talk coaching. I do a lot of reprogramming. So belief reprogramming is what I use. And because that was where I got into the nooks and crannies of my own psyche and realized that I had all these beliefs, like, men always cheat on me. It's the man that always leaves, like all of these. And the modality that I use actually can shift those, kind of like hypnotherapy.
Right.
So every generation has their differences. And what I'll say about the millennial, generation, which seems to be what you're asking about, is that if you look at where that generation came from, they basically came into the internet completely unsupervised, and not from a place of neglect, but from a place of, like, parents saying, I didn't know I needed to watch what my kids were. But it was just like a whole new experience. And so a lot of what that age learned about intimacy and relationships is what they saw on the internet, which is completely unrealistic. I remember, like, my son, who is, I think in 5th or 6th grade, had sex education, and they started with porn is not reality, which I really appreciated. But I think a lot of the millennial generation grew up in that, in understanding that as intimacy. And so there's and that creates disconnection, because it's also a generation where they're always in their phone, and their phone can become a distraction. And for my generation too, like anyone, the phone can become a distraction in a way to stay safe in my little world. And what true intimacy needs is into me, I see, is to connect heart to heart, eye to eye, and say, this is who I am. Like, that's real intimacy. That takes a lot of courage. And And I also feel that what I see with my clients in this age is that they were not really taught how to communicate. They've communicated through texting, so
Yeah.
short little like texting. And so there's a need to teach vulnerability, communication, and how to feel safe connecting in that super vulnerable place. I find that somewhat with like, I'm a Gen Xer, I guess. And, you know, I get confused with all the generations, but like with Gen Xers, it's
Me
more
too.
like wounding in their parental, parents and how their parents, came from like the baby boomers, and the baby boomers were just all about like, we either fit in this box and we got to look really perfect. And so like you see how this kind of passes down generationally. So I do love knowing about like the energies of those generations, because I think it's important to understand what their wounding is in order to move through to a space of vulnerability and connection.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head when it comes to communicating. Um, Carrie, everything is now through texting. Even like some of my friends, and we're older and we do text, but it's like, hey, I'll see you there in 15 minutes. Hey, I'll be there. But the younger generation, if I'm friends with any of them, they just want to text, and there's no intimacy, like you just said it. I mean, it's perfect. Is it are men using that as a place to hide then because they don't want to get rejected? Because that's what I'm hearing, and what I've been reading is that men will just, as they call it, DM a woman who's in a bikini or whatever, and most of the time I find those sites catfishing anyway.
Mhm.
Is the spoken word coming to an end?
Not if I have anything to say about it. I mean, but that's the thing about the millennials, is that we didn't know. So it's not
Yeah.
like from a place of, it being anything malicious. It just wasn't known. It's like they, you know, and I think that there's also something about that generation where their minds, and I look at like my kids who are not millennials, I guess they're Gen Alpha or Gen Zs, I don't know. But anyway, like their minds move so fast.
Yeah.
So it is about honoring that. But yes, I feel, because I have a niece who's 30, nephews who are in their 20s, and like hearing about people breaking up over text, having difficult conversations. Like, first, I don't know that we've ever been taught. There should be a communication class that everyone should take about how to have a difficult conversation in the most respectful way.
Yeah.
It is vulnerable. So it's not like, I think when we say this is bad, this is bad that people are doing this, that creates like a feeling of guilt. But if you look at where it comes from and how it's so protective and how it's so scary to feel these feelings and then be rejected, to express them, and then the possibility of being rejected, you can understand why someone would want to break up over text.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
it's a more fundamental issue of teaching communication, teaching how to have a difficult conversation and then move through it. Like my parents, I never saw them fight until they were divorced. So I went in my whole first marriage thinking every time I had an argument with my husband that we were going to get divorced. That was just like it was encoded in me that was what was going to happen. And that's something I still have to work through to this day. And it's important for me that like my husband and I both believe that we should have disagreements in front of our children, and they should see us resolve. They should see the resolution, and they should see us like resolve it, the issues, have it escalate a little bit. We're not huge yellers anyway, but have it escalate and then feel the conflict and then see the resolution
Yeah.
and then see us come back together in a space of connection. That's an important thing to witness and to understand as a child.
Yeah.
So,
No, I definitely agree. Yeah. Go ahead, Kai. I'm sorry.
yep, yeah, I feel complete with that.
I, in because I just feel, with social media, and and it's funny because I'm as we're talking, I'm taking down some notes, and I one of the things I wrote is social media is killing the conversation or killing relationships, because you know, you got these women that might be on Instagram or whatever. And, you know, I talk about the ones I see are in bikinis and all that. And they're getting all these DMs from all these young guys. And and because it seems like it's almost impossible to approach a woman now, because what are you going to say? Because you're so used to texting and hiding in a bubble. Are there a couple of steps that you would talk to people about how to create intimate relationships? Like, what would you suggest, like, they go through first to be able to talk to someone, to the opposite sex, or even to their friends?
Yeah. The couple steps that I would say is one, to get to know yourself, and I had to work with a coach because I was going into the deep, deep, dark stuff, my big fears. And I think that's important, because when we expect someone to meet us in a place of intimacy, but we can't be intimate with ourselves, or we are scared to open up, we really, like, I don't know if you've ever heard like attracts like.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, it's the same vibration attracts the same vibration. We're just going to, like, if we have the thought of like, well, if I open myself to this person's going to hurt me. And that's the fear that's kind of running our world. We attract those kind of people. And I know this for absolute fact, because I attracted men who were like not the, you know, the best version of who I wanted to be in relationship from my wounding. But when that cleared and when I healed, and that's why I love the energy modalities that I work with, I was just in a different mind space. So like, I would say, one, get to know yourself, know who you are, like really know who you are. Who are you alone in your house? You know, as you're falling asleep, what are the thoughts that you have? What are important to you? Where, you know, have you experienced wounding in the past? And do you want to go into that and heal that? Look, they don't call it dark night of the soul for nothing. It's a scary journey. It's a scary journey, but it's the thing like that when you come out of it, you know, and that's why I love to work with people. Like, I love to work with people as a coach, and I love to work with coaches, because sometimes it's like everything in you wants to stay with the familiar, which is the dysfunction. Like, it's just like, because it's familiar and I know what it is. And I know when I reach out to someone, they're going to reject me. So like, I just got it. Like, I know it's painful, but I know that it's going to happen. It's like the way the mind gravitates towards that familiar.
So you're rejecting yourself right off the bat.
Right. If you're not willing to look underneath what's really going on, what's really creating that. So getting to know yourself. And I have like a whole podcast called Getting to Know Yourself, how to get to know yourself. Like, I'm a huge advocate of self-care, of not doing care for myself because I feel like I have to, but because it feels nourishing. So I do yoga every single day. It's a place where I cry on my mat. I question on my mat. That's just my form, but journaling, meditation, you know, going to a group that's like, maybe that involves your interests. Because like, let's say I'm interested in yoga, going to a yoga class, or let's say I'm interested in a certain kind of sport, going to meet people who like that, to get to know people who maybe would like to have a little bit of a deeper connection. So getting to know yourself through self-care, journaling, anything like that. And then really working on your own wounding. I mean, these are not little steps. I know. It's like, I wish I could say like, you take the blue pill and then you go out and you just know what to say. You know, and also looking at the kinds of people that I lead my people, like after we've done all the clearing and the reprogramming, I lead my people through like, okay, now let's look at what you really want. What kind of partner do you really want? What kind of partner will make you feel, will help you to feel connected and a sense of belonging? And we go deep. We're not just on the surface thing of like, he makes, you know, $100,000 a year. He's 6 foot tall. He's 150, whatever, like that. You know, we're looking at like, what are the experiences you really want to have with this person that will feel fulfilling? But as you can see, that takes knowing yourself first. That's where we always start.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, these are the, it is, like you said, a task, but if you want to, find someone, be with someone, not be alone, like you said, know yourself, work on your wounds, journal, meditate. I think the biggest thing, which I take from this podcast right now, is the group setting with like-minded people, because at
Hmm.
least you already got at least one thing in common. And you can start a
Hmm.
conversation like that. So yeah, I'm always for meeting people in meetup events. My God, there's tons of meetup events around the city. Here in New
Yeah.
York alone, there's pretty much one every 2 or 3 days if you pay attention. I mean, first of all, I and we're talking with Carrie Jeroslow here. I want to go back to the group setting. Because I think that's so important. And once you work on your wounds and all that, and then now you feel like you could go out and go to the group setting. As a man, do they make the first move now, or because when you're in a group setting, it's pretty much everybody's there to
Yeah.
mingle? I've been to some group settings and real estate events that I used to go to. I see people sitting in the couch. Well, I see other people. I'm like, so why are you coming here then?
Yeah.
Singles events that I used to go to a few years ago, same thing. I would see guys sitting in another room and everybody's in the main room. So I would say to myself, why did you come here?
Right.
So yeah, touch base more on that if you can, please.
Yeah. So I am one of the most non-traditional people. I think that I know, like those rules, I say throw them out. That's the thing is like if I know myself and I'm looking across the room and I make contact with someone, I might be really scared, but I would want to go over and just say hi or somehow work my way towards that person. And as a woman, I mean, this is like, I don't know, why are there rules? Like, who made up those rules? And I would say, like one, I'm an introvert. I'm probably the person sitting on that sofa because as much as I want to connect,
I
I'm
don't
really
believe that one bit.
oh my gosh, I am. I am such well, but like here's the thing, Will, is that sitting here with you one on one, I have a purpose. It's just one person. I feel like
Right.
I can connect. I do better in connecting in those small, like I would much prefer going to a dinner party than going to a big club. Like
I gotcha.
it's more me. I can have more meaningful conversations, which is important to me, but that's me knowing myself that I like that. But I think people have all different skill sets in terms of how to
Right.
start up a conversation. I just am about to record a podcast about connection with my own podcast,
Yeah.
and and I talk about like dipping your toe in. So you say hello and you see, does that other person look back?
Yeah.
And then okay, they looked at me and they said hello back. Then I put my foot in. How are you doing today? My name's Carrie. And they're like, oh, my name's Will. Oh, well, nice to meet you. Then I put my other foot in, and it's like, or if I drop my toe in and the person's like, looks the other way, I go, okay, I guess that I'm not going to put my whole foot in, So like taking it
Yeah.
slowly and kind of feeling it out, being sensitive to the energetics, like the energy between you and the other person. Um, I'm very much an empath, so usually I can feel like, is someone not at all in my interest, is not at all interested in me, or is there like, a little
Yeah.
bit of a like energy between us? But I think it's important to throw away the rules. Now, some people really value tradition, and I don't think there's anything wrong with tradition.
Right.
I like it when my husband holds the door open for me, and I think that that's really nice. And, I'm teaching that to my children. But at the same time, there are some women who enjoy their independence and like to do that. And here's where communication comes in. So
It's
if a
always
guy
come down.
holds the door open for me, but I'm an independent woman, I'm going to say, I like to hold the door open too. And like feeling like I can say that instead of being held down by these rules of it's supposed to be this way.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to communication. I mean, it seems that's the number one thing when it comes to relationship. It's communicating. First of all, Carrie, I want to thank you so much for being on People on Dating. I really
Mhm.
appreciate it. And before I let you go, just a couple more things. Talk about more about your podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Will. My podcast is called Relationship Diversity Podcast,
Mhm.
and um, we bust through all of societal programming to to be able to design what you want in relationships. So I talk about all relationship structures from solo amory, which are people who choose to be single from an
Right.
intentional, conscious place, to monogamy, to ethical non monogamy, and everything in between, because I don't advocate any one relationship structure. I advocate knowing yourself to know what you want in whatever chapter of life you're in. And so we go into all of that. I do lots of solo episodes, and I also do interviews as well, with people who want to talk about their structure, or how they do it their own way. I also talk with experts that bring in lots of different great tips that I can't talk about because it's a movement. The relationship diversity is a movement, and I'm only one voice in this movement. So I only have my life, and there's a whole range of other experiences that I love talking to people about. So that's the podcast, and it's available on all podcast platforms.
Yeah, I'll definitely put on the show notes and talk about your upcoming coaching program, right? You're gonna have
Yeah.
yes, talk more about that.
So I do one-on-one coaching that is an 8-week relationship reprogramming intensive. We meet 6 times. I'm like have Voxer support throughout the entire 8 weeks, and we are really going deep and reprogramming all of the old beliefs that are not serving you. And so we uncover those, we reprogram them through this kind of, it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of like hypnosis. But I do all the work. So
Yeah.
it's really cool. And I'm experiencing people making significant shifts in their lives from that. So that's my one-on-one offering. And then in March, I'm going to be starting a group coaching program that's going to
Okay.
be 90 days to design your most intimate dream relationship. And we're going to be doing some group reprogramming. We're going to be looking at the relationship with yourself. We're going to be coming together as a community. It will be a very, carefully curated community that is built on acceptance and safety. It's very important that the community, that everyone feels safe in that, because we'll be talking about some pretty intimate stuff. But it's a way to kind of experience what I do and the coaching in a group setting, and then also come out with this design of what you want your dream relationship to look like.
No, it sounds good. Again, I'll once you get that going, please let me know
I
and
will.
talk about your book.
Oh, so I wrote a book called Why Do They Always Break Up With Me?
Yeah. Okay. Hey, that's
It
honest to
pretty
the
much
point.
says it.
Yeah.
And that was my experience, right? Until my divorce, and that really pivotal 3 months where I shifted everything. And so it is telling my story and then giving an 8-week, an 8-step process to go through what I call heartbreak, to really understanding what you want and healing your relationship. So it starts with self-acceptance and gratitude and belief shifting and forgiveness. And I really take people through these steps one by one to, to work on healing their heartbreak, whether that heartbreak happened when they were a child or whether through relationships. It is the exact process that I use, along with working with a coach, a healer guy. And yeah, like it was the exact process that I used. So I talk about that through the book, and give people a roadmap to get there.
No, it sounds good. Again, I'll put that in the show notes. And if somebody want to get in contact with you, what's the best way?
Yeah, come to my website, carriejeroslow.com, or you could come to relationshipdiversitypodcast.com. Either way, there's a form to connect with me.
No, it sounds good. Well, again, Carrie, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on, Will.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.